Recently, I shot 2 weddings back to back with the Canon R6 Mark III and the Canon C50 for the first time. Let's go behind the scenes and take a look at some of the edited photos to see if they are a good combo for wedding photography. The R6 Mark III and the C50 both share the exact same 32.5 megapixel full frame sensor, so they do pair perfectly together with each other, but the R6 Mark III does have a viewfinder, a mechanical shutter, and it has IBIS as well, which is what makes it the more superior camera for photography. So I started both days with groom prep using the Canon R6 Mark III, which was my main photography camera across both of the days. For 90% of the time across both days, I paired the R6 Mark III with the RF 28-70 f2.8. I absolutely love the 28-70. It is so sharp considering it's not an L series lens, but my favorite part about it is definitely the size and the weight. It is so light and it is so small, so it pairs perfectly with my R6 Mark III and my C50 when I do rig it out to get handheld shots for video. After groom prep, I actually started to get some candids as the guests started to arrive for the day. The first wedding did have a nicer area for the guests to mingle in because there was just a bunch of natural light coming into a certain part of the room, which did mean I could keep my ISO down to around 800 to 1600 a lot of the time. However, at the other wedding, the area was fully indoors with horrible warm spotlights, which just doesn't really make your face look as flattering. It was pretty dark in there, so I did have my ISO around 3200 and my shutter to around 1/160th of a second with my aperture wide open at 2.8. I did use a little bit of denoise in Lightroom as well, which really did help, but the R6 Mark III and the 28-70 looked like a great choice for both candids and groom prep. When it was time for the ceremony, this is when I got the C50 out and started dual shooting for the rest of the day. I did pair the C50 with the RF 70-200 f2.8 for the entire day, and all of these shots from the ceremony and the confetti was taken on the Canon C50. I absolutely love that it does share the same sensor as the R6 Mark III, but I do have to admit it, I really do miss the viewfinder, especially when using the 70-200 and especially when I am outside in the sun, because the screen is nice, but it's just not the brightest, and it is also pretty small as well. But regardless, the photos look so nice. They are really sharp and detailed, and pairing it with the 70-200 is just amazing. Sometimes when using the 70-200 outside, I do like to use around f4 to 5.6 to make the photos even sharper, because the background is already really compressed anyway when you are past 100mm. Now overall, I am really impressed so far with the photos taken from the Canon R6 Mark III and the Canon C50, but there's a way to make certain photos even better when editing, and that is using this video sponsor, which is Reblem AI. Once you've done all of your editing in Lightroom, one of the last jobs to do can be skin retouching to clear any scars, acne, or spots from someone's face. Now, skin imperfections is totally natural and normal, but some people might not like their photo being taken if they have like a new spot or scar pop up that's not normally there. This process used to take a good, I'd say 5 to 10 minutes potentially on every single photo. However, with the help of Reblem AI, this can actually be done in seconds, and definitely in my case, done at a much higher standard as well than if I was to do it manually. So there are 2 ways to use Reblem AI. You can actually use it as a direct plugin in Lightroom and Photoshop by right-clicking on the photo and then clicking Edit in Reblem. The second way to use it is actually by exporting all of your photos once you're done with them and then bringing them into Reblem to batch edit them. Reblem will then start to analyze your photo and mask all of the faces that are in the frame for you to edit individually. So if there's 3 people in the frame, it will notice that, and then there's 3 different faces that you can edit at once. It's a very simple software. On the right, you have 2 presets and 3 sliders to use. I normally stick to the natural preset so it doesn't completely smooth out the skin. Now the fashion preset will really smooth out all of the imperfections on the skin, and this actually could be a great preset to use if you're shooting with a model, for example, for like a fashion brand. Once you've applied your preset, you can go in and dial in the sliders to your liking. You have the general slider, which will just do an overall general cleanup. You then have the texture slider, which will then smooth out the skin a little bit more, and then the tone slider as well, which will actually even out the coloring of the skin from any potential red patches. Unless it's for like a fashion shoot, I don't really want to go too in depth with the cleanup and the smoothing on the skin to make them look too polished and fake. I do still want them to look quite natural. This just gives a little subtle cleanup to the skin that might make someone feel a little bit better when they're looking at their photo. And also please note that this version right now is in beta, and the UI will slightly be changed in the final version for all users. Reblem have also just released a version 1.5 beta, which actually brings teeth whitening, shine removal, and cleaning backdrop. And if you do want to save 40% on a lifetime subscription, then make sure to use the link in the description below before June 1st to keep that 40% discount. From June 1st onwards, you can save 20% if you do use my link in the description. Thank you very much to Reblem for sponsoring this video, so let's get back into it. My favorite photos from both of the days are definitely the couple portraits. We got very lucky with the weather on both of the days, and the mix between the 28-70 and the 70-200 meant I was able to get some lovely wide shots to show off the location, and then the more intimate, tighter shots on the 70-200, for example. On the second day, we did trial a veil shot where Ben went over to throw the veil into the air to create this really cool floating veil shot with both the groom and the bride looking at the camera, and then we did another variation of it with them both kissing, and I just think this is really cool and a lot of fun to do as well. The R6 Mark III and the C50 definitely perform their best in outside environments, moments when their ISO is at its lowest. But when shooting in the speeches, the ISO did actually go up to as high as 10,000 on the second day. I do tend to shoot a lot in shutter priority just to make sure I don't get any motion blur in my shots, especially on the Canon C50 because that doesn't have any IBIS at all. But with a little bit of denoise in Lightroom, it makes them images so sharp and clean, and the R6 Mark III and the C50 really did impress me in these low light scenarios. I do sometimes recommend using shutter priority instead of aperture priority because if you are in a low light scenario, even with auto ISO, the camera does try to keep the ISO as low as possible, and sometimes it really does make the shutter go really low to, sometimes I've had it at 1/30th of a second. And obviously if you're using a Canon C50 with no IBIS, especially if you're trying to be quick and you're moving a little bit, so 1/30th of a second might not make the photo sharp. So that's why I don't really like using aperture priority, because when using shutter priority, it tends to have the aperture at its lowest anyway. Sometimes if you are out doing photos like that and you want to be really quick, shutter priority might be a little bit better than aperture priority. After the speeches were over, we did move on to the first dance and the party, which is probably my favorite part of the day. And this is when I packed my C50 away and the 70-200, and I just used the R6 Mark III with the RF 16-28mm, and I used the Godox V1 flash. I just went on camera flash and actually bounced it off of the ceiling, but sometimes if it's a little bit too dark, I do like to put a grid on the front of the flash and point the flash directly towards people to get more of a paparazzi vibe with my dance floor shots, just to make it a little bit more cool and interesting if bouncing the flash don't work. Looking at some of the photos, the R6 Mark III really did impress me. The photos look really sharp and contrasty, and the colours just look so punchy and natural as well. Like I said, I love Canon colours, and I really like getting the ultra wide shots with the 16-28mm as well. Overall, my thoughts on the Canon R6 Mark III and the Canon C50 are absolutely brilliant. I love the photos that come out of these two cameras, and I would 100% recommend them both for wedding photography. However, it doesn't mean that they're perfect, because they aren't. Well, I mean, the R6 Mark III is pretty perfect in my opinion anyway. It has literally pretty much everything you would want in a photography camera. The only thing I'd say compared to the Mark II is the file sizes are quite a bit larger due to the increased 32.5 megapixel sensor over the 24 megapixel sensor. With storage being so expensive as well at the minute, this could be a little bit of a problem, but then again, having a high megapixel sensor does allow you to crop in more, and also shoot in 1.6 times crop mode, which I actually did a lot on both of the cameras across both of the wedding days. However though, the battery life on both of the cameras are, I would say, a significant downgrade compared to the Mark II. I only own 4 batteries at the moment though, so I actually brought a charger with me, and I think I went through 3 batteries on the R6 Mark III, where I actually used to be able to shoot a whole wedding on maybe like 1.5 to maximum 2 batteries on the Mark II. It's not the biggest deal in the world if you do own a lot of batteries, but it's just something that I'd point out, as batteries have gotten a little bit more expensive with the R6 Mark III and C50, unless you do use third-party batteries like me, because I think you can get like 2 and a charger for like £50 on Amazon. I've always said though, even though the R6 Mark III is an absolute phenomenal camera and it is a brilliant upgrade over the Canon R6 Mark II, I actually think it's probably worth saving your money and buying the Canon R6 Mark II instead, because that's also an absolute phenomenal camera as well. The upgrades on the Mark III are mainly on the video side and very little on the photo side, and if you pair that with the lower file sizes, if that's something that's important to you, with the lower megapixel sensor, then the R6 Mark II might be the better purchase for wedding photography, just because how good of a camera that is. The Canon C50 performed really well as well, and the photos look so nice, but I actually wouldn't recommend it as its stills only camera because of the lack of viewfinder, IBIS and mechanical shutter. Being cautious of not having too low of a shutter speed as well isn't ideal when using a camera without IBIS, as you don't want to have motion blur in any of your photos if you're too low, but luckily with the good low light performance and denoise of Lightroom, you can go safe and have a higher shutter speed if needed, because you can bump the ISO quite a lot, and obviously if you're using like a prime lens as well, it's going to be even better for you. If I'm being honest, I'd recommend just buying a second R6 Mark III instead, as it just makes a little bit more sense to have 2 of the same body for photography. But like I said, as I'm a video shooter first, I wanted to get the C50 for its cinema features, and having the near exact same photography specs as the R6 Mark III was just an absolute bonus for me, and was a big reason why I got the C50 in the first place, as I did need a camera that could do photography. And that is why it is my B camera for photography, but it is definitely more than capable for that. And if I'm being honest, it probably can be your A camera as well. I just wouldn't recommend it because it doesn't have a viewfinder. The autofocus as well was an absolute 10 out of 10 on both of these cameras, and it's just utterly ridiculous how good autofocus is now in 2026. I've actually mapped one of the back AF buttons on the back of the camera to eye autofocus, and it just locks onto the eye instantly. It's ridiculous. These weddings were so fun to shoot, and I absolutely loved using both of these cameras. But what do you think overall of the final photos? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if you did enjoy this video, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another video out in the future. Remember, if you do want to save 40% before June 1st on Reblim AI, use the link in the description below, and after June 1st, it goes to 20% off a lifetime and a yearly discount as well. So if you are interested in that software, use the link in the description below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.